What's good, everybody? My name is Alckemy. Today, you and I are going to be taking a look at the spatial effects from Baby Audio. They went and sent me these plugins, the whole entire plugin suite. In the next video, we'll be doing the distortion and compressors and all that stuff because I figured it'd be easier to bundle them in that way. But full disclosure, they did send me these plugins and they said that I could be as unbiased as I want to be. So I'm not really here to sell you on these plugins, but really just here to check them out to see if this kind of content is interesting to anybody or to see if these plugins might be for you. So it's really interesting to see their, how do you say, their take on what they're doing, because they're not really trying to compete with everybody else of like, oh, this, it's like an all-in-one plugin or something, so to speak, even though some stuff kind of rides the line of that. But I will say that between all of these, the quality of everything sounds really good, and I have a couple of favorites here in particular. But let's go ahead and play with some sounds and see if you enjoy these plugins. So what I've got for now is Spaced Out, Crystalline, Super VHS, and Comeback Kid. And what I've got is just a granular sound engine that's kind of pulled up. And I figure that for this specific use case, I find that using some kind of granular thing would be an excellent showcase to see if we can pull out the potential of these particular effects. So let's go ahead and start with Spaced Out. Spaced Out is like a multi-effect. On their website, it says that it's a combination of an insanely large amount of different things put together in a very simple interface. I have to like give like a trace back a couple of steps, because I made the mistake of clicking the jump off button, or lift off button right here, which I think freezes the program. So I was hitting random a bunch of times and being like, it's not really doing anything. And I think that's because I had that button on. But basically what we have here is a step sequencer delay, which I think is kind of unique. You've got this mode up here that can change between the different playback times. One thing I will say with this is I wish that there was a way to have just like a free time on this, like a thing, because I like to abuse delays, and you'll see me do that with the Comeback Kid. But even still, it sounds really good. So what we can do is kind of just play this tic-tac-toe game here and create a cool little shape. I don't know, something of the sort like this. And then we will set this to straight, and we can adjust the intensity and whatnot. Which is really cool. You've got your intensity over here, and you've got your dimension expander, which sounds pretty good. And then you've got 4 different texture modes that go between clean, wonky tape, lo-fi, and hazy. I like the hazy one in particular. You can also set this to reverse. Now with this XY pad over on the left, it's going to focus more on the delay, and over on the right, it will focus more on the space. We'll talk about that in a second. This also has a built-in ducker, which I think is pretty cool. And there's this weird filter here. And this is one thing that is not my favorite because it's not very intuitive. So it's a low pass and a high pass filter, but in order for you to kind of change them, you have to click one side or the other, which is kind of odd. It does work, and I think that for what it's supposed to achieve, it definitely sounds good, but it's kind of just an odd interface between that. And there we go. Now, we weren't really hearing anything, and it was getting more quiet because of the ducking, but I think that having a healthy mix between these can kind of sound pretty interesting. But what we can do is kind of just click on these, and you can see that this is big versus like small delay, I guess, and kind of grab something there. But let's go ahead and change this to 100% wet. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a limiter here and turn this down, because we're going to get some kind of probably peaking or something. But once we do that, I'll just turn the release up and the threshold down a bit. We can kind of listen to what this sounds like on full mix. I think it sounds really good. And like I said, I feel like Baby Audio's plugins are designed to like solve one specific area that they're trying to accomplish. And in the delay department or the space department, I think this stuff sounds pretty nice. So let's go ahead and focus on the reverb side now. And what these is, excuse me, is a kind of like it's a reverb, but it does a bunch of different stuff. There's a shimmer right here with the stardust. There's kind of a filter here. There's a cleanup thing, which I read the manual. I don't quite remember what it does, but it just kind of helps you shape the sound, which might be like a high pass or something. But this is another XY pad that we can kind of control with the reverb on this. So let's go ahead and listen to what that sounds like. Pretty nice. So we've got different sizes here that are vacuum, small space, medium, and outer space. So let's go ahead and just turn that one on and play a chord. I'm trying to like show off with different chords that I know instead of playing the same thing over, but forgive me as I'm limited in the knowledge of music theory. I'm also limited to my QWERTY keyboard, so it sounds really good though. Cool flanging effect right here. So yeah, obviously this is meant to be in combination with each other. So if you're trying to create some cool like ultra spacey things, especially for intros or doing, you know, really big buildups in your techno you know, stuff, then I think that this is a really cool plugin. I think that, again, it doesn't necessarily do what you would typically expect from a reverb or slash delay, but I do think that it sounds really nice. And if you hit, again, the lift off, then it's going to kind of keep everything. So, but if you turn it off, then when you randomize stuff, then it will sound drastically different. And again, I just wanted to tell everybody that because I made the mistake. But let's go ahead and just randomize this, which is always great. I love randomization plugins. It's not drastically different, but I do think that it gives just a little bit of different flavor and stuff. And it's kind of cool because I feel like the randomization plugins they have in here are designed to be like usable, as opposed to let's just completely randomize the most extreme settings that we can possibly do, which has a place, but I like that they're trying to keep it within the usable space within that. So no pun intended. But yeah, I like this plugin. I think that the delay sounds really cool, and you know, be the judge for yourself on whether or not you think that's something that would fit in your repertoire. Now, Crystalline is actually a favorite of mine. I think that this reverb sounds really good, and it's got shimmer on it, and I'm such a sucker for shimmer reverbs. Let's go ahead and maybe change up the patch into something a little bit different, so that way we're not just listening to the same thing over and over. But let's try maybe just something simple, like let's do a vocal. Why not? Let's go female vocal mid, and then we'll kind of jump around this and see if we can make this shine nice and bright. Without the crystalline, this sounds like this. Okay, we need to make this a little bit more angelic, so we're going to go ahead and make this into a pad and kind of... In a world full of tacos. So the crystalline reverb has a lot of different parameters on here that I think are actually super useful. So over on the reflections, you've got your size, sparkle, and your width. You can turn that super high up, and you've got this stuff. Then you've got the resolution that goes all the way to pristine. So you've got basic, high, and pristine. You've got modulation depth over here, and then you've got shimmer, which I think sounds really nice. And what's cool is I think that, okay, so this is a multiplicative thing where you've got 6 times 4 kilohertz, 2x, And then this is how, I guess this is like how much shimmer it has. And then over here, you've got where you want to boost the shimmer, which is cool. I actually didn't know that. And then over on the left, you've got when the reverb starts and then when it ends. You've got a ducker on here. You've got reverse and freeze. You've got your dry wet. And then over here, you've got your damping, which in this particular case, I believe is actually a high pass frequency, but you can control the sides here that I think is super useful. And then you've got a gate. As far as shaping, you've got tone, which will either boost the lows or the highs. You've got your smoothing over here, which will change it kind of within the shape, I guess. And then you've got warping to where you can kind of move stuff over to the left or right. Anyways, within all this stuff, it sounds really good to me. And I think that this is a great reverb to have, like really lush pads and whatnot. So it just sounds really good. Yeah, super nice and super wide, and this is really good for just creating like super gigantic reverb things. I mean, I think it's also good for subtle things too, if you wanted to. I wouldn't necessarily put this on a snare as a room reverb or something, but I do think that it sounds really nice. And anything that's kind of spacey and stuff, I feel like our ears are naturally like, oh man, we like this. It sounds pleasing. So let's see if we can make this just like super duper pad like, and then we can grab a filter here. Really nice. Really, I mean, it kind of speaks for itself, you know. And again, I'm not really looking for like the craziest features on this and look at these knobs and these knobs, but just by turning this on and putting, you know, one effect on this pad, I guess two effects with the filter, it sounds really nice to me. I guess we could have put the filter on this as well if we're working on this on 100%. So let's go ahead and see if that gives us a lot of control. So we're here. I like that it sounds very different with this filter. It almost sounds like a vowel. I like this, man. It's nice. Crystalline is definitely a winner in my book. I definitely like this one. So yeah, that's spaced out in Crystalline. Let's go ahead and talk about some bass stuff, because these other two I find, actually, let me go ahead and cover Comeback Kid first. So we'll go ahead and change the patch into something a little bit different. And I'll probably just do one from scratch or try a different thing on here, which I think could be cool. But we'll do let's do some kind of percussion, like a sleigh bell or something. And let's see what that sounds like. Let me back off at the position here. Sounds good. So with Comeback Kid, it's more of a conventional delay. It's based off of analog. And I mean, I think that this is probably their most popular plugin. And by the way, I wanted to tell you all that these plugins are also available on iOS, which I almost feel like I should have done that first. Actually, no, because I'm having issues with my computer and I can't get my phone to recognize. But These plugins are available on iOS as well, which actually makes them extremely valuable just on their own front, just because there's not really a whole lot of plugins on the market that sound this good and are also relatively affordable for what they do. But man, you get some stuff like this within Drambo, and you get some like LFOs and effects and stuff going on, they start to sound really good. And I will say, as a disclaimer, because I'm kind of covering everything, I'm not going crazy with how much you can break this sound, except for this one. I'll give you a little bit of insight. But for me in particular, when I work with delays, having a delay that sounds like a delay is great. But I also like to see what kind of timbres they can create and what kind of flavors they can create, because I like to break sounds. So if we were to change this into the mode here, which we want to set off of sync, which is in free, whenever you have something like this, I'm just going to set the dry wet to 100%, or actually what I'm going to do is set that to 1 and then turn the dry out. Changing the time playback and along with the feedback is going to give you a lot of different artifacts and stuff. So So being able to work with stuff like this is really important. What I like about this one in particular is that there's a couple of different things on here that you can work with to kind of just change the output of this. And if you're working with something like Bitwig, which I'm going to go back and just talk about how this delay sounds in just a second, so I'm getting a little ahead of myself. But if you were to play with some of the modulators on here, say randoms and stuff, where you're constantly turning these on and making these knobs move on their own, then essentially you can get a lot more out of the plugin by creating cool glitches and stuff as the means that I would want to. So yeah, with that, let's go ahead and just play with that a little bit more, and I'll kind of show you the flavor aspect of some of this stuff. Really cool phaser. And I'm pretty sure that's some kind of reverb. So it's cool because it has distortion. It's got the cheap, which I think is just either a bit crusher or sample downsampler. Some really cool stuff with this. Now I wonder if this jumps if we go and change this from an actual feedback. So yeah, so lots of really cool stuff to play with on this one. Now I know that that's just a means of how I would particularly break the sound, but for a conventional delay, I do think that the quality of it sounds really good. So let's go ahead and find something. I think the kalimba in harmonic is actually pretty cool. It says that it's in harmonic, but you can hear a tone from it. So let's go ahead and maybe initialize this. Sounds nice. What do you guys think? Now, there's, again, like, this plugin isn't super deep, but for how it sounds, I think is a great way to kind of just get a feel for what it sounds like. We can maybe even try something that has a little bit more high-end information in it. Perhaps some other kind of instrument that is a little bit easier to... Let's go ahead and maybe change this to something percussive. But you can hear that, it just sounds really good. It's got that nice, rich analog type of sound. Yeah, so if you're looking for a delay that sounds super rich and super, you know, like lush, I guess I would describe this as, then I think that it would kind of fit within your, you know, I guess arsenal pretty well. My thing with these is I think that these are really cool like use cases for specific kinds of sounds. I wouldn't necessarily reach for these all the time because of the particular workflow that I have, but you can't really deny the quality that these don't sound great, you know? So there's that. Now I want to talk about VHS and kind of as the last thing, because I find that as cool as this is, and as even though I can kind of show you a basis of how it sounds with these kinds of sounds, I've actually found myself using these on bass, which it sounds pretty freaking cool. So we want to save the best for last. There's this little chorus knob right here that just sounds awesome. But with this, it's kind of like a lo-fi type plugin-ish. And it sounds amazing, but you've got distortion, you've got wash, which is kind of just like this wash reverb, and then you've got the drift, which is kind of like your wow or your flutter or whatever. It also has a static thing built into it, and then you've got some shaping that is some kind of distortion built into it, but it sounds really good. So I will show you this on this particular patch, but then I want to pull up a bass and just show you like it gets dope. So take a listen. Which is all really cool, right? This is like a finely controlled lo-fi plugin, and I think that it sounds really good. I love the way that it really does sound like, you know, messed up tape. But I don't actually feel like that is the best use case to show you. So let me pull up one of these basses that I have. Now keep in mind, like one thing that I would like from this plugin in particular is if it has like a low cut in it or something, because of the magic chorus that it has. And this magic chorus is actually a freebie on its own without the other lo-fi stuff. But just take a listen to how this bass sounds with this chorus when we start to add the other things. So on its own, it sounds like this. Let's go ahead and turn the filter on. So that's without anything going on. But now that we have that, let's go ahead and turn on this magic chorus. And what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to place this on an effect channel, and we'll kind of just put this on the high band here, so that way we're not messing with the lows. But check this out. God, it's so good. Let's try this one with a little bit more high end on it. I didn't realize I had a bunch of distortion on that, but even still, you know, it sounds nice and crunchy. So, I mean, with this, you know, you can kind of balance it out if you want to, but I think the chorus on this just sounds awesome. And yeah, I mean, this is something that I have downloaded on iOS as well whenever I make neurobasses on my phone and stuff. But I think that this is one of my favorite ones, to be honest, and I think that it sounds pretty dang freaking cool. So with that, these are kind of a mixture of the plugins, and I think that the quality themselves and the way that it sounds, they're all, you can't really deny it. They sound great to me. The pricing is a little steep, I feel, so I'm not sure if that's something that you all feel fully invested in. I think that all of these, except for Comeback Kid, is like more than $50. You can check Baby Audio's website, which I'll link to in the description. But I mean, you know, you kind of be the judge and let me know what you all think in the comments on whether or not you think this stuff sounds good to you or not. But with that, I mean, yeah, these are definitely things that I'll start reaching for whenever I want to kind of expand my repertoire. But this chorus in particular, I think, is something that will definitely find a staple. Crystalline as well. I think those two are my favorite ones out of the kind of effect suite plugins and stuff. But I guess if I could give any kind of advice or any kind of suggestions to this, it would be to have a low cut on this one, so that way I don't have to do this. The other thing is on Spaced Out. I would like the free timing on this in particular, which I think would be kind of cool. And maybe, you know, I don't know, just more reverb options, or a convolution version of this would be cool, where you can put in your own impulse. I think that, you know, I don't know, for me in particular, the thing with analog is that it's like, it's just one thing, right? It's just one thing. And I get that and I respect that. And back in the day when people were releasing plugins like that, they, you know, they have like a vintage characteristic and a stylistic choice of sound. But for me, I'm always looking at how I can get more out of a plugin, and I wouldn't expect it to have more quote unquote features, but I encourage Baby Audio to maybe incorporate something that allows you to have a little bit more versatility with some of their stuff in general. And so what I mean by that is, instead of it just being like one particular characteristic of sound, you know, the convolution reverb would be an excellent point, because you can at least, you know, import your own samples. You can at least, you know, manipulate a specific kind of chorus even with this, to make it not seem like it's just a, oh, that's super VHS sound, you know, oh, that's that classic, you know, kind of compressor that used to be the thing back in the day. That's just where I'm at with particular sounds, but some people might want that old school stuff. And that's why I say, like, you be the judge on whether or not you want those things. But even still, even if it only does one thing, I think that these sounds are pretty cool. So let me know what you all think in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much, Baby Audio, for sending me these plugins. And hopefully I did a good job of just kind of educating people on what these things sound like. I'll see you in the next one.